Hey, good morning to you all. It's May 8th, 2022 at 10:49 a.m. and a very special, heartfelt Happy Mother's Day to all of the terrific mothers out there in this world. Thank you for all that you do and have done and will continue to do. You make the world go round. And it brings me, to something I'm kind of embarrassed by, but I've actually never publicly on this channel or any that we broadcast on thank the incredible women that are behind the scenes that make everything happen in this effort. And they're who I consider my angels. We call them the angels. And they're just powerhouse women. I got to start off with Becky Johnson, aka Becky Weesey, aka not Brenda Weesey. Um, Words can't even express my appreciation of what Becky does behind the scenes to make all of these videos happen on TikTok. And she's a powerhouse. She's a powerhouse of virtue and justice. She's from the heartland, and she's as tough as nails. And her beauty and her charm and her attitude and everything is just like one of the most powerful human beings I have ever met. And everything that we do basically emanates from how she expresses an interpretation of her own experience in this madness that the con reveals, and ultimately what we're expressing, because we both are warriors for justice. And I just want to say thank you, Becky, for all that you do. And next up is my other angel, Roseanne Raviola Mile, out of Boulder City, Nevada, previously out of Chicago. This woman I refer to as Mighty Mouse. She is she is such a powerful human being. She's a woman who's 72 years old. She stands about 4'8", and I call her Mighty Mouse because she can leap tall buildings with a single bound. She never gives up. She's relentless. She is such a warrior for justice. And when she first saw the con, her entire life added up. And it ultimately, she found a pathway through getting behind our efforts to champion this effort to the regular people that must come to grips with what we show, because she knew corruption from the very beginning of her days as an early girl, childhood growing up in Chicago, when the Democratic machine would come to the neighborhood, knock on doors, and give people tickets to the circus and say, you know who you're voting for. The whole thing was a rigged sham from the very beginning. And boy, have I learned a lot about Chicago politics through Roseanne and all the other things that are happening in Vegas, baby, Vegas. And it just inspires me to know that a woman, 72, came up through, Vietnam War era protests and civil rights and all of those types of things, globbed on at this age, and just it never relents. And that's, my God, I know there's got to be millions out there like her, but maybe she's one in a million. Either way, I can't thank her enough for all that she does. And Paris Faye, my God, Paris Faye is this glorious, unbelievably contextualized, detailed person who dives deeply, deeply into the madness of what our story constitutes, how chain of lien title, I should say, and all of the nature of the forensic evidence that proves over and over and over how this system of insane corruption gets away with it, because the courts refuse to look at the discovery that Paris has brought to the fore in so many cases. She's done 400 cases. She reaches out and helps people who are losing their homes for free all the time. She's a warrior for justice. She's this Nordic goddess. And I am just so blessed to call her one of, our army, quite frankly, or my army of angels. I mean, these women, I cannot ever express how much they mean to me and the value I think they mean to all of us in society. And so it's within that light and that glory of springtime and the flower of growing, the sentiment to be able to galvanize millions upon millions of people. I need to refer to my notes this morning because I want to get this right. Look, jumping from Paris and her knowledge of what happens in the courts to what I'm seeing out there in social media right now, it seems like we've triggered a whole lot of reactions, and people are coming at me left and right all over the country, but particularly on Twitter, I'm finding that, again, I'm running into this situation where people who have been in the courts for so long, They so desperately want the world to understand all of the minutiae of the details of all of these things that have transpired for years, of the corruption that they can prove, but yet aren't working, but somehow they're able to maneuver to last in courts long enough, which I just can't even understand how people have been able to find the commitment to do this. Because I mean, you're like in hell. You're like in the trenches of guerrilla warfare in World War I with the mustard gas coming at you when you're in the courts, and they're not listening, and they're not allowing discovery, and they're not allowing the truth of the evidence and all of these things. That's a stacked court and a runaway. What do we why can't I think of the term when they stack the deck against you? The bottom line is that it's all about the money in the courts, and the courts have gotten overwhelmed over the years with the scope of the mountains of cases that came through with these foreclosures that overwhelmed the courts. And so what the judiciary did around the country, is that they assigned specific judges to specific reasons to basically bulldoze foreclosures. And the easy argument is, did you pay for your mortgage? And like most of us would say, no, well, if you're not paying, you don't get to live in your house. You don't get a free house. But in the case of Paris Felix, she always says, well, neither are you, to the corrupt servicers and foreclosure mills that don't have the right to foreclose on these houses that these damn judges are rubber stamping. And I need to draw attention to a gentleman by the name of Bruce Jacobs out of Miami, Florida. He's about to go up against the Supreme Court to save his bar license, because he's the only champion that's gone the distance to call a spade and show us time and time again of how the servicers and the foreclosure mills working for the banks are using perjury and deception and lying to the court and getting away with it. The justices, the judges aren't allowing discovery. I literally sat in on one of Bruce's cases on a Zoom call, and the judge said, well, look, if my government said to me what you're telling me, then I'd believe you, but they're not, so I won't. And so these guys get away with first of all, privilege. So imagine, like, literally the metaphor might be like a slave master, who's like, coming to get his slave back, and he's tortured this poor slave, and he's destroyed his life, and he terrorizes his family, all those things. And he stands up in court because he's a white guy with a suit on at the time, and he gets to, get his slave back because of privilege. I mean, it's really kind of what we're talking about here. That's the way I read it. And it makes me, it's terrorism. It's judicial terrorism in that scenario, which followed the financial terrorism. And the financial terrorism, it's all happening, and it's happened time and time again, because we created this monstrous bailout through this $29 trillion emergency stimulus that made its way to the financial institutions, that then wound up in quantitative easing. And I think $16 trillion later on the quantitative easing, they bought these goddamn bonds back, which were, the bad assets on the books of the banks that they themselves sold and got stuck with because they couldn't move them off their books to the pensioners that they were selling to, that they blew up anyway. And ultimately the government bought it back sight unseen based on everything we show you in the con. And then, trillions of dollars were spent on this. And so these bottom feeders, these goddamn hyenas of madness, these servicers, these foreclosure mills, literally get to lie, steal, and deceit their way to stealing a home to be able to get either the insurance or some sort of formula, depending on where they sit in the system, to get the money that is made possible by these bond buyback programs. And it's happened now for over a decade, and it's insane. Having lived through it myself, knowing those answers and not being able to get that to the world is driving me insane. Literally, I'm going to call out a name again. You guys have heard me say this before, but please narrow into this, man. I have been in contact. Look, the New York Times isn't going to tell the story. They're in on it, okay? The Washington Post, all of them, they've all moved on. This all stuff is sight unseen. Don't look, don't tell. If it's not happening, in the mainstream, nobody's going to care about it. They're going to railroad these people, except all of these freaking warriors that have landed as long as they have. But the ones who want everybody to know what's going on in the courts, nobody outside of the courts gives a damn, because they don't know about all the minutia. And they're like, well, you didn't pay your mortgage in the first place. So what we got to do is we got to get them all of the details that are in the con to make everybody understand that it was a criminal enterprise from soup to nuts that led to this freaking devastation that buried
tens of millions of people. And I know that we haven't reached tens of millions of people, but we have to. So please spread the word. Get this truth to them, because when you've got the truth, it makes you bulletproof, because you've got to understand who did what, when, and how to create this criminal syndicate that then the government fucking bailed out. And the government, I mean by the Federal Reserve. A lot of people are like, well, that's not the government. Fuck off, it's not the government. It lands on, the dollar that they can digitize into existence, because the United States won World War II. If that's not the government, I don't know what is. So fuck off to all those people that are like, oh yeah, the Fed has to remain independent. And independent for whom? The financial system that's basically become a train wreck, runaway train wreck of corruption? Yeah, that's what they've done, and that we got to get it back, and that's the whole point. That's what we need to create, this massive, massive movement of people overcoming the walls of corruption and obfuscation, which leads me to the next point that I had to lead to. So, look, man, like I said, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Chicago, nobody's told the full story, not even close, right? They covered it up in the aftermath and wanted it to go away. You get these goddamn settlements in the courts, the banks paid $250 billion in fines, and they got away with $29 trillion in 2009, another 20 plus trillion since 2019, and more. It's the same. It's the goddamn Federal Reserve providing cocaine, fuel, liquidity that just fuels all this stuff that ultimately half of us have no connection to, other than getting destroyed by it, but we don't know what's happening. It's happening behind the scenes, but it's happening with the guys that show up on CNBC every day, or maybe, front page New York Times, whatever the case, but nobody knows what they're getting away with. The grift is insane. So ultimately, I'm trying to, find people that are against corruption in media. And so one thing led to another, and because I have, relationships in the industry, I got put in contact with this dude, David Sirota. David Sirota was the co-writer and creator, I should say, of Don't Look Up, spectacular film on Netflix that basically uses satire to show that we can't figure our way out of big problems. And he has this, platform called The Lever, which they do great work trying to expose corruption. But for whatever reason, David Sirota is ignoring the tens of thousands of documents that I have and witnesses and everything else that basically prove what Bruce Jacobs is saying and fighting on his own to save his bar license on behalf of the tens of millions of people that have gotten wiped out by this corruption. Now, I do know, for example, there are options to be able to save your house through, Regulation X and Z, and if you've got the right attorneys, you can maneuver around the servicers, then you can work out loan mods and everything else. But some people don't want to do that, and it gets really intense when you start to go through the people that are in the know and how these things work. But ultimately, Bruce Jacobs is just calling a spade out of Miami, and we've got these the evidence. This is insane of judicial corruption. Meanwhile, you got a guy like David Sirota pointing out judicial corruption and things that are easy, like the Koch brothers and other things that were in the front page of the Wall Street Journal, 6 months ago. It's like he's doing the surface stuff that I guess is safe, and it's either telling me one of two things. A guy like David Sirota doesn't want to tell the truth because he's connected to guys like Bernie Sanders who never told the truth, because guys like Bernie Sanders talking platitudes. They never brought the details of which we bring in the goddamn con. And that's why we need millions upon millions upon millions of people to see it. And I've had so many people out there like, this really gets me pissed off above all else, right? So, you get these people that are like, well, if it's so important to the society, why don't you offer it for free? Okay, well, first and foremost, we did offer it for free. All you got to do is go to the library, use your library card, and get this program called Hoopla, and you can watch it for free. Okay, problem solved. But here's the thing that pisses me off about a producer and an entrepreneur. Would I ever imagine going to an airline and buying a ticket for free, getting a ticket for free? Unless, you got family that works there and that sort of thing. Or am I going to go to a restaurant and expect somebody to serve me for free? Or I'm going to, go to a movie and expect somebody to pay for my... What the fuck are you people talking about, man? We offered the $29 trillion truth that the government gets paid $90 billion, $70 billion a year to prevent, that we're the only ones who got the goddamn answer, that everybody like Rachel Maddow and Tucker Carlson and everybody else who cumulatively, Anderson Cooper, probably get paid north of $60 million a year to prevent you from knowing what the goddamn truth is. And bottom line is, we try to put this out there for what, $2 an episode? How many of you people that are asking this thing for free are spending money at Netflix and spending other things on everything else and then having the nerve to ask to get it for free, even though we did offer it for free? But $2 for the per episode, $10 for the $29 trillion truth. It's important for me to people to buy in, because if you don't buy in our society, nothing ever changes. I want to prove to the griftopians of madness, of obfuscation that have destroyed this country, who make millions of dollars lying, that the truth actually has value. That's where I'm coming from. Because at the moment, the only thing that has fucking value are liars, cheaters, and deceptive con artists that you're fucking buying. We don't have a freaking choice between the new robber barons led by Obama, who covered for Wall Street, and the new Confederacy led by, Air Trump, who's playing ball with fucking the biggest mobster of all, Putin, and has been up to his eyeballs in all of this fucking madness forever. Listen, stop. I need people who aren't looking at their fucking navel gazing in the courts going, somebody save us in the courts. I need people that aren't fucking pathetic, that want life for free because something's owed to them. No, you earn your way in our society. Now, do I want a bottom line for people who get fucked by the system? You bet your ass I do. And I'll be honest with you, if you want to know the truth, based on precedent, the goddamn con, in my estimation, is worth over $4 trillion based on the numbers I know and what we present to the government based on precedent of what happened in the Lynn Sismoniak case. I could go on. And if I got $4 trillion, I'd give $500,000 to the 10 million people who lost their fucking homes. I'm not in it to be greedy, you son of a bitches who think that. I'm in it to get the fucking truth, to get our country back. I want liberty and justice for all, based on the integrity of law, based on accountability, based on common sense, because we used to be a superpower that could build all sorts of fucking shit, from like aircraft carriers to infrastructure to bridges to buildings to... We've got the functional capacity to do anything we want. And we're tripped up by the madness of corruption, greed, and complicity. Those people need to be taken down, and they need to be put in the corner, okay? A corner with four walls and bars and gates. That's what needs to happen. And there's all sorts of stuff I could go on about that. But, a lot of people are paying attention to Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. And I've been paying a great deal of attention to this whole situation. But, is believable as Amber is on a lot of occasion, I'm not seeing the evidence, okay? And, and I believe Johnny overall, just from the, do I think they had a train wreck marriage? Was it stupid? She got $7 million for 15 months of marriage. And, all of these other kinds of things. And this is being played with the public, relations madness, because Johnny did have his career wrecked by this. And I'm sure Amber Heard's having some major problems as a result of this now. But, look, it's all about evidence to me in the end. And I'm sure that's going to be the big question mark for everybody, because from what I've heard from Amber Heard is that, all of this crazy shit happened, but I'm not seeing criminal action on her part against Johnny, except for, I think she got restraining order downstream, but, and I think there's some pictures of black and blue marks and this and that, but based on what she said, it was a lot more routine and a lot more violent than what I've seen so far. And, based on everything I've heard from her, it takes two to tango. And I'm not trying to do a judgment call on this, but I'm talking about the legal system itself. And ultimately, you got to depend on lawyers to do what's ethical. And I see the judge say all the time, you're not supposed to do this and that, and you're not supposed to get on social media and all of these other things. And you got to trust the lawyers are going to do it, as, same with, quite frankly, the jury, right? There's a lot of trust in the system. Meanwhile, what I'm trying to point out to David Sirota, who's ignoring this, and the public writ large, is that in the courts, there have been perjury and lies and deception on documentation fraud for tens of millions of cases. And for some reason, Rachel Maddow missed $30 million a year to get it wrong, talks about the documentation fabrication in the Trump case with the election certifications, and she's right about that, but she's going to ignore tens of millions of illegal foreclosures in the courts based on what I'm telling you. That's what they've done. How does that not fucking freak you out when you know that $29 trillion was spent to the bad guys that buried everybody? Then they got another time. People talking $50 trillion to the financial system to loot, and they're in cahoots with all the global oligarchs. A lot of us are like, okay, let's go to war with Putin. Really? We're going to have a nuclear war? But okay, let's just say we're doing it for what? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? I'm telling you right now, that doesn't exist. Meanwhile, our financial system is actually playing ball with them through, hedge funds and all of the other guys, real estate agents and Trump and money laundering, okay? So it's bullshit. We got to purge corruption. And ultimately, that brings me to Netflix and HBO. Somebody asked me yesterday, there's a chance they can reconsider. Look, man, I don't know. I didn't have firsthand evidence of, HBO and Netflix passing on the con because, somebody from, let's say, Chase or Goldman or, BlackRock told them not to because it was too dangerous to expose their business model. I don't have that evidence. We had a freaking sales agent that was supposedly legit who never gave us notes, never gave us feedback. It was like this freaking black hole of nothing. And I'm thinking to myself as a business development executive, I know how deals work. So again, we're getting played even by our own guys, and we couldn't make anything happen. And maybe it's just as simple as that the gatekeepers at HBO are just stupid, that they don't understand that freaking 300 million people or some odd number like that got destroyed and we spent $50 trillion on the getaway and they don't want to expose that to the American people or the world for that matter? No, they don't. Why? Because they have to get constant funding from the machine that we expose. That's all there is to it. So could we get on HBO and Netflix eventually? Yeah, I think so. If like tens of millions of you bought the goddamn con, showed them that there was a business model, and then they'd want to get on the action because everybody's going where the heat is, right? That's ultimately what would happen. But would we accept it at that time? No, to be honest with you, I want to change the goddamn paradigm. I want to beat them at their own game. I am a competitor, if you haven't figured it out yet. I don't get in the ring to freaking back down. I'm in this to fucking win it. And I need tens of millions of you who are like me that want to save the United States and become the United States again to get to the new Renaissance, because we could. We could have created this new paradigm shift as early as 2000. All this is a continuation of madness based on corruption. That's it. That's it. Know the details. They're in the con. Sorry I'm yelling. Happy Mother's Day. Let's get back to, and ultimately I think I covered everything I wanted to, so I think I'll finish with this. Look, I've got 3 women on Mother's Day who give me more support and fuel and inspiration and animation than a man deserves, quite frankly. I'm so inspired. Men, women, black, white, Jew, Gentile, what doesn't matter, all of us. Anybody who believes in liberty and justice for all. Anybody who believes in a system that makes sense. You want the airplane to fly? You want to join us. You want the street lights to work? You join us. You want the freaking ship to float? You join us. You want the fucking guns of Navarone to work the way they're supposed to? Join us. You want the guys that are from Navy SEAL Team 6 to take out the bad guys in the right way instead of working for guys accidentally that they don't even know because of the mass corruption? Join us. We got to purge this system. And again, don't be afraid. That's what they freaking depend on. Like FDR said, the only thing to fear is fear itself. It took me a long time to figure that out. When you have the truth, you're bulletproof. Onwards and upwards, and thanks to all of you who provide and give and nourish life. That's what I'm in it for, man. The sanctity of life, the nourishment of life. And it's not because some backroom judge at the fucking Supreme Court wants to create slavery. No, I want the society to work in a dynamic, thriving way that we look out for each other, we are each other's keeper, and we pick each other up, and we fucking fight for liberty and justice for all like our lives depends on it, because it does.